All right. Well, welcome to our sixth class now, which is awesome. Really enjoy that. It is week 3, Wednesday for Python, June 23rd, 2021. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are excited for today. Today's a really kind of crucial, pivotal piece for what we're going to be doing. It is really important to know. So I want to make sure that we give plenty of time for this and, are moving forward. So just a little bit of housekeeping as a reminder, you have 2 discussions due this week. Don't be that person that I have to email on Sunday. Just go ahead and do them now. I mean, do them not now. Oh yeah, share my screen. Thanks, Nathan. Now I'm sharing my screen. Sorry about that. Don't be that person. Just do them right after class. I mean, they're open now to where you can do both currently, like right now. So make sure that you are doing that and you have those available. You have those available now. So just please make sure that you are doing that. Well, I'm trying to mess with the images. Cool. Your 2 assignments. Remember, you have 2 assignments due this week. If you look at the class sheet, this is always king. So even if I mess up and say, oops, in my email, I only said 2, but there's actually 3, always just check this. I'm a human, so I will mess up as well. But check this. So this week you've got time display and you have dojo survey revisited. And if you only did 2 last week, don't forget you have the dojos and ninjas. Again, that was my fault. That was my oversight. But make sure that you do time display and dojo survey by Sunday evening. So that is wildly important. And then I did just do, if you guys didn't make it, or if you're just joining, I did just do a Bootstrap demo. We're going to be using Bootstrap kind of moving forward when I make a form, just because it looks really nice and it's very simple to do. So if you did not get to make it, which is totally fine, it was 100% optional. If you didn't get to make it, that recording tonight will be up here at this 6:23 office hour. Just like this will be a hyperlink to that office hour video that's up on YouTube. Just a couple of things that I really want to go over real fast. Oh, dang it. I wish I wouldn't have closed that thing out. Is a couple questions from last class that I thought were awesome. So let me actually open up the, sorry, I'm unprepared here. There were 3 great questions from last class that I did a little bit of research and wanted to make sure that I got you guys answers because I told you I would. First one was, is there an all-encompassing path we can do to make sure that our user never sees oops, this is an error. I just want to make sure that worst case, I can create one of those 404. Hey, that looks like what you're looking for doesn't exist anymore, something like that. Is there anything like that? Now, we tried to do the URL, but we noticed that that was only good for if you passed 1 argument. So like /bear, that worked. But if I said /bear/9, that did not. So I did a little bit of research for you guys, and I did find that what you can do is at the end, and again, make sure that this is at the end of all of your URLs, you can do this path resource. Now, this is a built-in thing with Django. This will say any other path, regardless if it's, /bear/9/12/unicorn, whatever it is. I tried a bunch of different ones. If it doesn't exist here, it will go to this catch-all. So if you want an all-encompassing path, maybe you want to create a 404 page, you just use this path resource. And if it can't find the path, it will go to whatever method and do whatever you want it to do. So I just wanted to catch up on that. That is an awesome thing. Second thing is a couple people reached out after we did, if you were here, we did a GitHub kind of update, and you might have gotten an email that says, you have a secret key exposed from GitGuardian. Oh no. Which is kind of true, right? We want to keep our secret keys. And this was an oversight on my part. We want to keep our secret keys, well, secret. And so there's a couple of things that we actually have to do there. So just to kind of talk about that, what is a secret key? Well, it is a identifier that is specific to you and your project. When we get into API stuff, maybe towards the back half of that, not back half, but last 2 weeks, we might do some sort of API call. You will generate, you'll get an API key from a company. So let's say I want to use Google Maps, right? And I want to query and do some sort of directions on my application. Well, Google might give me 100 queries a day, right? 100 times users can say from this point to this point, give me directions. Perfect. Anything over that, they might say, okay, you're taking up a lot of our resources. We're going to charge you, 5 cents per request after that. Well, okay, if that is the case, what they will do, and not just if this is the case, they will always, anytime you set up a Google, you have to have like a Google developer account, basically. They will give you an API key, or they will give you just some sort of specific key that is specific to you and your account. For that specific application, let's say Google Maps, you'll have this Google developer account, and then you will have an API key for that specific API. Now, why is that important? Well, that's how they can tell that it's you and not somebody else. That way they can tell the owner of the application, which is you, whoever wrote that code, is making these requests, or their users are making this request, and then they will bill you. Now, if you put your API key out there and people can see this, what they will do is they will take that API key, put it into their code, and now anytime their users are making a request, it goes to your account and you have to pay for it. Happens all the time. So we need to keep that stuff secret. I was saying this in the office hour. I'm not quite sure the point of the Django secret key. I'm thinking because Django has some built-in admin stuff that's probably why. But if you look in your settings PY, there is something called a secret key. Now, your secret key is going to look different than mine. And it's not going to look like this. It's going to look a lot like this, some random string. This random string identifies that this is my Django project, that it is unique to this. Now, we don't want to push that to GitHub because let's say we're building an application, we're doing something. I don't want to have any sort of vulnerabilities. So what we can actually do is a workaround. Now, what we do there is in my project level. So, sorry. My project level, I will create this file called secrets.py. Now, does it have to be secrets.py? No, it can be something you want, but I think secrets.py actually makes sense. And again, we want to make sure, yeah, thanks for hacking me, Jordan. Want to make sure that our code makes sense, right? So create this file, secrets.py. And what you will actually do is you'll go to your secret key within your settings, and you will just copy this entire thing. Copy secret key equals whatever string that is. We're going to put our secret key in this secrets.py. Now, what happens is we can have access to this. We're basically creating a variable. You will do the same thing with an API. Like a Google, it might say like Google Maps, right? Equals blah, 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 blah. And so what we can do is, okay, I've got my secret key. Now in my settings, there's a couple things I have to do. I can refer to that, and it's kind of like a reference of a variable. But in order to have access to that specific variable name, secret key, I then have to import secrets. Secrets. I have to import that file in order to have access to that. So I say from period import secrets. In the same way, kind of like how we did from period import views, from period import secrets. Now I have access to all of my variables or whatever's in my secrets.py. Here, where it says secret key, instead of actually having our secret key, I then can just say secrets dot. And the secrets dot says, go look into my secrets file. And I want you to find dot, whatever this is called. In this case, it's secret key. And so this value, secrets.secret key, is the same thing as this. It's the same value. It's just a reference to this. So that's step one. Well, it's like step three. I now change my secret key. Instead of the actual secret key, I put it in a new file called secrets, and then I reference it here. Now, the most important part, because even if you do this and you push it to GitHub, you will get that error. That is where a .getignore file comes in. .getignore is a file that when you are uploading to GitHub, once it sees .getignore, it is saying, do not upload whatever is in my getignore. Don't upload that to GitHub at all. I don't want that to be shown. So I create and this is even not even in my project level. This is on the same level as my manage.py. I create a dot get ignore. And in there, I say ignore secrets.py. I don't want you to put that on GitHub. So here, I ignore secrets.py. So when I push to GitHub, it's going to push everything except this secrets.py, which has my secret key. So my file will have it. I can reference it. Right? But my code is not going to have my specific key in there. Nathan asks, what's the difference, by the way, you're importing from doing it this way from .secret import all? This is just saying from this level import secrets, but I'm not sure if that would actually work from secret import all. In the same way of like from .models import all. Every time, and I don't know why this is, every time I do that, whenever we get to models, you'll see what I'm talking about. Every time I do that, I get an error and I have to actually say import the actual model. So I'm not sure the difference between those two. I
don't know. That's just because I got the error. I was like, oh, I better fix that. And I went and found some Stack Overflow, conversations about it. And that was the way that they had in the conversation, that's the way they recommended to do it. I tried it. It worked. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then if it works, that's awesome. There's always, I will say this, there's never one way to do something. I mean, there's sometimes one way to do something, but in development, if somebody ever says, this is the only way to do this, well, then they're kind of little minded, because there's always a lot of ways to do something. So that's awesome. That's great. I learned something today. I always learn something, especially from you, Nathan. Jordan asked, do you ever have multiple secret keys would fall apart in that case? Yes, you do have multiple secret keys. You just wouldn't name them all secret key. You might have something like, something like that. And then you would call Google API or Twitter. Yeah, something like that. You would just have, and so now if I want to call that somewhere in my code, I would import secrets.py. And then I would say secrets.google API. And that value will be whatever that API key is. So you'll just name the number. You can't have them all a secret key. Any questions on that? How are we feeling about that? Give me a 1 if you feel good, and give me a 0 in the chat if you don't. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to build out a program today. And then I will make sure that we do that as well. And then we'll push it to GitHub. Cool. Last thing is, this Django shortcuts error. Oftentimes you will get this error, and I always have students that ask it. So like if I'm in this and I say views, sometimes this, it's just a linter thing. So it doesn't actually affect your code. So don't worry about it. Always does that. I don't know why. Cool. I just saw something on Discord about that. So I wanted to make sure that I reference that. Yeah, so for just the get ignore, it's on the same level as your, let's get that down there. It's on the same level as your main or manage.py. So even here's my project, here's my app. It's on the same level. And you say dot get ignore. That's what you name the file. And then you put the actual file name that you don't want to upload. In this case, is secrets.py. Perfect. Cool. Hope that helps. And we learned some about APIs today, which is really cool. Okay, so let's jump in. We got quite a bit to go through today. These are going to be our 2 heavy hitters. We're going to talk about forms. We're really going to dive into forms. How do we get data from our users? And then we're going to talk about session. And that is how we just kind of have persistent data. Before we do that, I really just want to very quickly touch on static files. You don't need them in this course. I'll be super blatantly honest. You don't need them at all for the exam. You're not going to have to do any sort of CSS or JavaScript, but it's a good thing to know. So if we look here at the Learn platform, I don't know why I did So if I look at the Python part-time, there is an entire thing on static files. And it's just very quickly, a couple of ways you do it the same way. There's just some additives you have to have. So if we're looking at these static files here, now before I do a static file, now a static file would be your CSS and your JavaScript and your images. So just know that you would create a folder called static. And then you can have a subfolder like CSS, image, JS. But in the same way of templates, create a folder called static. And so within that static, you will put your CSS, your images, and your JavaScript. Now, we reference it the same way in our HTML as we do with our CSS. But before we do reference it, we have to tell it load static. We have to say, hey, prepare for a static type file. So what we do is we say load static, and then it looks pretty similar, just a little bit different. What we say is, okay, link this, but I'm also going to have these curly brackets and percentage signs. You will get very used to writing curly brackets and percentage signs. You will absolutely get used to doing that. Then you're saying, expect the static, and here's the pathway. Make sure that this .css is lowercase, right? It's not all uppercase. Make sure we have our same naming convention styles, but we link it in the same sort of way. If we have a CSS folder, then we say, okay, go into my CSS folder, then go into my style. If we don't, then you would just say, you know, apostrophe style.css. But the way that we do this, again, just as a reminder, is we say the curly bracket percentage sign. This is a Django templating engine. That's what we're using to render and use our Django code, basically. That's kind of the beginning. And we say, okay, we're going to do this static file, and here's the pathway. So if I want to do that, that's how I would do my CSS. Same thing with my JavaScript. And then what's important is if we want to have images, you do have to do in your source, you have to do that every time. So your CSS and your JavaScript, you really have to do one time. Anytime you want to do an image, though, you do have to do this static image / image.jpg. So I just really wanted to point that out. I feel like it's pretty low level in the sense of you guys know how to reference stuff. You guys know how to do that. All you're adding is this percentage sign, this curly bracket, and then static. That's it. Other than that, that's all that we had to do. And then there's a great video on just kind of attaching the static with that. So that's how you link, and then that is how you call it. Any questions on that? Okay, let's jump in because we got a lot to go over. We, friends, are going to be talking about forms, and we're going to be talking about session. Now, these are two of the most important things that you will learn, you know, like for the next couple of weeks. Forms are something you will use all the time, wherever you are, whatever language you're doing, you will use forms. Session is a great way to make data persistent or persist over different methods, which we're going to get to, but forms are going to be very crucial. And so really to understand forms, we first have to understand the difference between a GET versus a POST request. Now, when we, let's say I am going to CD, where am I, LS? I am going to do this. I am going to CD into my environments. I want to make sure that I always do this with you guys because I feel like that is important. Make sure. So anytime, remember that we are making a Django project. I like to make sure that we're doing it together. So I need to activate my virtual environment. The way that I'm going to do that is I navigate where I need to go. And then I personally am going to run this code: source, name of my environment, then activate. So let's see what's in here. Oh yeah, I did name it that. So I say source, name of my environment, then activate. So let's see what's in here. Oh yeah, I did name it that. So I say source, name of my environment, then activate. by 3 env bin activate. Perfect. Now you can see my environment is there. Now I need to navigate where I want to go. Okay. So anybody remember how to start a Python, a Django project? What do I use here?
Django admin manage start project.
Yeah. So say Django dash admin start project. If I could spell, that'd be awesome.
And your project name.
Yeah. So I'm going to say lecture dose because I already have a lecture too. Okay. So then now what am I going to do? I'm going to CD into lecture dose. And the ls looks like I have my manage.py. I have my lecture dose. Now what am I going to do?
Create your app.
Yep, I'm gonna create my app. How do I do that, Frank?
Python manage.py start app and the app name.
Cool. Good job. So now if I open this, I'm going to do this for the first couple of weeks and then I'll come with a built app. I just want to make sure that we get repetition. There's a couple things I can do, right? I've got my lecture dose and I've got my main. Perfect. Now, my lecture dose, I have to go in here. I have to say, oops, main, right? I have to give it my main app. What we just learned is I also have to create a secrets.py, right? And I'm going to take this, put that here. Perfect. Save that. And here I'm going to say from space period, import secrets. Now, instead of this, I'm going to say secrets dot secret key. Cool. That's all good to go. And then lastly, I want to make sure that out of here, I am making a get ignore. And I'm saying ignore secrets dot py. That's a little added step we just realized and we talked about. I had to put my secret key somewhere. So now it's safe. If I upload to GitHub, it's not going to upload that. Cool. So I've done that. I've added my app. Now I go to my URLs. I say path. I say include. Here I'm going to say that. Include main.urls. Perfect. Now my main.urls does not have this information. So I need to make sure, oh shoot. I need to make sure that I go and I create that. I'm done in my project level. I don't need to do anything else. Now I come here. I can say urls.py. Perfect. Let's say this. Get rid of include. So I'm going a little bit quick, but there's plenty of video and stuff on building this, and I have that cheat sheet for you guys. But I'm just going to say views dot index. Now I have to say from the position, the same path of where I'm at in my URLs. I want to import views. Give me access to that. Perfect. Perfect. This is saying from the same pathway. I'm on the same level. That's what this is saying. In the same way, that's why I did secrets, because secrets and settings are in the same hierarchy. So I did this guy. I don't know what needs to be saved. Oh, here. Cool. So I say from this import path, import views. I need to go into my views and create that index. Get rid of all this. Go into my views. I create index that takes in a request, right? And then I do something with it. Now, if I want to redirect, don't forget, I have to bring in redirect. Direct, perfect. But for right now, I'm just going to say pass. Meaning I don't want it to break. It's not going to do anything. Cool. So I've got this built. That's awesome. In my main, if I want to HTML, I say templates. Right, if I wanted to have static, I would add static, but I don't care to have that. I'm going to go ahead and create an index.html. Okay, now our entire program is set up. Now we can actually get to teaching. Form and session. Okay. I know there's some questions in chat. If Aaron and Mel could help me with that, that would be awesome. Because there's quite a bit to go over. So I want to dive in and then I will stop for some questions here in a bit. Okay. So when I do this, let's actually do an H1. This is in HTML. I'm going to do this. And then in my views, let's render. Perfect. So now when I run my server, it should
Can you
work.
just do render over return, like a return render, or
Oh yeah, sorry, I do have to return. Okay, cool. So now here I can say Python 3 manage.py run server. Cool. So you can see this. I've run my server. The SQLite 3 comes. Now if I go to localhost 8000, it says this isn't HTML. Now, one thing I want to note is that when I look at my terminal, I will immediately see that I did, you see this get right here, right? This is what we call a get request. Now, can anybody remember what the difference between can anybody remember like the request response cycle and kind of give me a synopsis of it? All the way from back, request response cycle.
does it get request something, like ask you to go get something?
Well,
And,
just the request response cycle. Don't even worry about get right now. Mark actually has it great in chat. Request is when a client requests something from the server, and response is how the server responds to that request, right? Absolutely, Mark. That is nailed. 100 points to you. That is exactly what the request response cycle looks like, right? The client makes some sort of request. I always have a hard time saying that. In this case, I said, I am requesting to go to localhost 8000, sends it, and then my server does whatever it does in the back end, and then spits something back out to my client. That is what we call a get request, when I just want to get some information. Now, one thing to know is there are a ton of different types of requests. And when I say a ton, I don't mean like 100, but there's quite a few different types of requests that a user can make. The two that we're going to really focus on, oh, I was like, why is this so confusing? The two that we're really going to focus on are a get request and a post request. Those are the two big requests that we're going to focus on here. Now, if you decide to go on to MERN, you're going to find ones like delete, put, patch. Those are two really important ones and popular ones. But here we are really just going to focus on post and get. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but we can get to that later. Right now, I just want to help understand what is a post and a GET request. Now, a GET request can be summed up like this. I just need to get something from this request. Meaning, let's say I have a database and I want, or let's say I have Facebook, right? And I just want to get a user, right? That is what we call a GET request. You can kind of think about it like I'm going to go get a user from my database. A post request is when I want to give some sort of data. So when a user is filling out a form to create a Facebook profile, they're giving us that information, right? My server is receiving some sort of information. In order for that to happen, in order for my server to receive information, it has to be a post request, right? I'm giving it a post request. If I want to get something, if I want to query a database, if I just want to see the users in my database, I can use a GET request. And if I want to create a user, if I want to do something with the user's information that they are giving me, then that will be a post request. Does that make sense? You can kind of think about it like if I want to create something, you will use a post request. If I'm just going to get something, that is going to be a GET request. Any questions on this? It'll make more sense when we start building our forms. Nathan, I would say posting to Facebook is great. Yeah, actually creating a post on Facebook, you are creating something new. Yes, versus going to Facebook and getting the last, posts for the last year. That's the difference, right? I'm creating something versus I just want to read something. But if I just want to read, then it would just be a GET request. But if I want to create something, then I will do a post request. It'll make more sense when we start dealing with our forms. So let's actually deal with a form. Now, forms are going to be crucial in development. Crucial in development, because this is how we get information from our users. And at the end of the day, getting information from users is why Facebook is a billion dollar company, right? Anytime you create a form or anytime you register for something, you put in your email for something, everything is a form. Those websites that say, hey, get an extra 10% off if you put in your email within the next 3 minutes. Okay, great. That is a form that is taking your information, right? They're going to eventually put you on some sort of email database to where then you're going to get spammed every single day with how to buy mattresses for cheap. It's like, how many mattresses do I actually need? You send me one every day. And so that type, or everything we get from a user that they're giving us, is a form. And so forms are going to be crucial for what we do with data right now. Well, in this course, we're not going to go through like heartbeats or pinging their like geolocation. We're going to deal with what is super popular. Like if I were to, I'm not going to go to Facebook now because it'll be on my Facebook, but forms are a crucial piece in development. So we're going to go through that right now. Now, if you guys missed my breakout for Bootstrap, that's okay. It's going to be uploaded later, but I am going to be using Bootstrap. I'm not necessarily going to be explaining it a ton. So just if you're confused by the Bootstrap stuff, just feel free. At the end of the day, we're making a form. You guys know how to make a form, just like a normal form in HTML. But let's go ahead and do this. Now, if I'm using Bootstrap, I'm going to do a couple things. First off, I'm going to create a container.
Container. Nice.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to create a container. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my first form. Now, you can see here that my emit abbreviation just says form get, or form post. Now, we are taking information from my user. So I'm going to do a form post. Now this builds it out for me. If you don't get that, if you don't have the form post, that's okay. I'm going to walk through each step. Every form is going to have 3 crucial pieces: the action, the method, and then in Django, there's some built-in security that is right here. Where's my right here? It's called our CSRF token. Now, I will just be blatantly honest with you. I forget it all the time. You can't run a form without it, but I do forget it all the time. And I guarantee that I will forget it in this class. You will get a nice little error that says, oops, don't have a CSRF token. This is the reason for this is to assure, it's a kind of built-in validation that shows, that assures that a user cannot go to some sort of URL and give some sort of information and our database be corrupt in the sense of maybe bad data or do some sort of SQL injection through a form, right? This is some built-in validation, built-in security for that Django provides. Like Aaron said in the chat, it's called cross-site request forgery hacking, right? So it's a way that we can prevent users from hacking our database or putting some bad data. So you do always have to have this. That's the third one. Now this method equals post tells our application that this type of request is a post type. This is crucial. You must have this. So method equals post, CSRF token. Now this action is wildly important. This action says, okay, when my user submits this information, here's the URL I want you to send it to. Meaning, if I say, create user. When my user submits their form, they fill out the data and they submit their form, it is going to take the post data and take it to my URLs PY and look for this specific URL. So it'll come here and say, do you have a create user? So I don't. Let's go ahead and make that. Create. Let's do this. Okay. So I'm going to say pass for right now. Now let's actually go ahead and make our form. So again, if you guys were part of the breakdown, then or the breakout session, then you will see this, and or you'll understand what this is. And if you didn't, that's okay. You can kind of come back. But basically, I'm going to make an H1 that has a class of MB3 and MT4. That's saying I'm going to create with some margin on the top and the bottom. It's basically going to say, so what should we make today? Let's create pizza.
Do we need to link in Bootstrap? Or?
Yes, we do. Thank you for doing that. Yes, you got a link in Bootstrap. So I'm using some Bootstrap code. So Bootstrap link, I went through that in the office hour. I have a hotkey that I just have to press a button. But I went through that in the office hour. If you're interested, it will be there. Tacos. Okay, so let's do something with tacos. So let's create a taco truck. Okay, so we're going to say create a taco truck. Perfect. So then my taco truck is going to have a name. It's going to have name. And I'm going to call that truck name. And then it's going to have an input. That is going to be form control. Forgot that I need to do columns. All. Column small 8. I think I did 4. I like that more. Perfect. So I created a input and a label. Now, input has got a very crucial piece called name. This is a built-in thing with my inputs. And we'll see why this is important. So I will refer back to this, but make sure that every input you have has got a name. So I'm just going to call it truck name. This value will become the identifier of the data that we send, which we'll get to here in a second. So I'm just going to create a couple of these. So I'm going to call this truck. What should we have part of our truck as? Truck. Food type. Well, we're a taco truck. I'm going to say region, maybe. Food region, like where are you located? Like where are you from? You know, because there's different types of tacos, all kinds of places. Good catch, Mark. Okay. So then I've got my food region. So I'm going to say region. Then my name is going to be region. I just didn't want to say name equals name because that gets confusing. And then maybe I'm going to say specialty. I spell specialty. Is that how you spell it? I'm just going to say special because. Okay. So I have that. And then I've got a button, BTN, primary. This is just saying I'm creating a button that has a class of button. This one's going to be blue. If I wanted a red one, that feels more appropriate. I'm going to call it danger. There's a lot of fun names. This is the size of it, just to kind of walk through Bootstrap. And then this is just some margin on the top. So if I were to look at this and I go, let's say, am I running my server still? Nope. So now I'm coming here. Forgot to put some stuff. I keep doing that. Oops. I'm gonna say MD2. Server's not right. Yeah, it is. Sorry, friends, a lot's going on. Okay. All right. So I'm not sure why. Let's just stop my server and then run it again because it wasn't reading my most recent data. Okay. So we're creating a taco truck that's got a truck name, a food region, and then a specialty. And I can type something in here. I can type anything in here. And then when I press submit, just to kind of recap, my user can type a name, a food region, and a specialty. And then when they press submit, what my computer will do, what my server's going, what my application will do is it will take all this information and it will send it as a post request to this URL. Okay. So just recapping, I've got a form. My form has 3 really important things. It's got its action. So where am I sending the data to? It's got a method. So what type of data is it? In this case, it is a post. And then it's got its CSRF token, which is some built-in security that you have to have in order for a form to work in Django. Here I've got an H1 that says I've got some margin bottom 3, margin top 4. Basically, that's just built-in bootstrap. If that doesn't make sense, that's okay. You don't have to. That says create a taco truck. I have a label and an input. This row is, again, bootstrap stuff. Label's got a 4 truck name. It says truck name. Because these are in a row, they're on the same line, just like this. And my input has 2 really important things. The class is, it is what it is. Like, you don't have to have bootstrap in order for this to work, obviously, totally fine. But it has a type. And then the most important thing is this name piece. This is going to be crucial. So now what I can do is and then I have a button that just sends all my information that has some bootstrap stuff to make it red and to make it size the way it is and give it some margin. So now I can actually make a truck, but my method that I have doesn't necessarily have anything, like it doesn't know what to do with my data, right? Right now we just said pass. So I can create something, I can send it. Let's actually do that just to see what it looks like. What should our truck name be? Anybody got a good truck name for me? Taco Time. I love Taco Time. They're Baja tacos. Woof. El Chapo. I like that the most. Actually, I don't know that I support El Chapo. I don't know if they're bad or not, but if they are. Where's El Chapo from? Mexico. Okay. And then what there should this El Chapo truck be? I like Dojo truck. We should not drugs. We're not doing a drug taco. Let's say carnitas tacos. Okay. So if I create a truck, well, we have didn't return anything, but what I wanted to show you is instead of this get that we had, you'll see that we have a post request to create user. Now the error is our actually create user doesn't do anything, but I just want to show you, okay, we have created a post request. So let's actually go make our method do something. Now, what I can do, if I want to show something on my HTML, what I actually want to do is let's create an HTML that has like the El Chapo's name. So what I can actually do is I can say, I can put this information in a dictionary. So what I can say is context. Now it doesn't have to be called context. I just like to always call it context. From here. But what that will do is that allows me to show some sort of information on my that'll allow me to show some sort of information. I'm trying to find the forms one on my HTML. So this is creating a dictionary of data.
I think it's in a session.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's in session. Yeah, I always try to refer. No, session's different. Anyways, so it will create a dictionary of data. So that way I can refer to that in my HTML. So let's go ahead and say, I'm going to create my key. So I'm going to call it truck. Now, the way you do a context, you do that. Then now what is the value of my truck? Well, remember that the type of data is request.post. So I have to give that in whenever I'm getting the value. Now, it sends it over as a dictionary. And so I have to give it the key, right? So the way that it works is it takes all the information from my form, it bundles it up, and it creates a key value pair for every input and the value submitted by the user. Now, I talked about how important the name piece is for my input. The reason that is because when it bundles it up as a dictionary, it's a key value pair. The value my user inputs for this input can be found by this as the key name. So this name of truck name is what is the identifier that says this specific value here, the one that my user put in at the input of truck name. That is how I get the value that is submitted. So what I would do here, just like this, right, is I would say, okay, my context is truck name. So now I'm creating a dictionary that's got a key of truck, and its value is whatever my user put in at the input with the name of truck name. I can do a region, same sort of thing, request dot post. I go to my, I'm just gonna do this, make this a little bit bigger, of region. So I can say region because that's what my input's name is. And then lastly, I've got a special that's going to be request dot post special. Perfect. So I've created this dictionary in this method, right? I've taken all the values that my user has given me in my form, and I've created this dictionary, this key value pair. So at truck, its value is whatever my user put in at the input with truck name. Region is whatever my user put in at the input of region. And then special is whatever my user put in at the input of special. But now what I can do is, let's say I want to see that information. I can return the render that takes a request, right? Say truck.html. And then now, in order for my HTML to actually show that information, whatever is in this key value pair, I have to also give it my context. So I say context. So just to clarify, this method receives the data once the button is pressed, right? The submit button, create a truck is pressed. It receives this request.post data. Immediately, it creates a dictionary called context. Again, this could be unicorn if you wanted. If you called this unicorn, just reference this as unicorn. Context is what you should be doing because it makes most sense. Everybody will know what that means, but just wanted to reference that these are arbitrary names. It creates a key value pair, write a dictionary for truck. Truck's value is request.post truck name. Region, region's value is whatever was inputted at the input with the name of region, and special, post special. Cool. And then what I'm actually doing is I'm saying, I want you to render truck.html. Well, notice we don't have a truck.html. So let's go ahead and make that. Cool. So if I come here, now the Django has something called a Django templating engine. And that is a way that we can actually write Python/Django code on our HTML. Mark, I'll get to that in just a second. So what I can do is I can say an H1, and then here I can actually do a double curly brackets. So I can say truck, right? This is in reference to the key that I just created, truck. So let's just see how this works. Let's just do this. We'll submit a form and we'll see if it works. It's from my server. All we're going to get from my form is just going to be the name. So I'll say Dojo Truck, food region, Washington. Last tacos. Okay. So what happened there was this was my GET request when I said localhost 8000. Then I submitted some sort of information as a post request. It sent that information to the URL of /localhost 8000 /create user. So on my code, what it actually did is it went to my URLs, it found create user and says, hey, I've got this post data for you. Okay, take that, go to my views file, and I want you to give that to my create method. It says, okay, great. Let's do that. It goes, finds this create method and says, okay, I'm giving you this request. This request here is your post data, right? And it says, okay, awesome. Create this dictionary. Here's the keys, key names. And the value is the data that you just sent, the input name with the name, or the input with the name of truck name, I want that value, whatever the user put in, to match this key. We did that, right? Then we return rendered. So we want to render our HTML, always takes a request. We give the HTML page, but in order for it to access the information that we put in our context, we have to give it our context. And then on our truck HTML, we use the Django templating engine to actually call that value. So the value of this key, which we know is the value that was inputted at truck name. And now I can show that. If I wanted to say, you know, H3 I hear you reside from, and then I said a region, and that your special is special. These are the key names, right? Truck, region, special. If I were to look here is truck, region, special. So now I save this and I go back to localhost 8000. I can say truck name is El Chapo from Mexico. Says El Chapo, I hear you reside from Mexico and that your special is lingua tacos. Okay. How do we feel about that? Any questions here? Yeah, give me a 1 if you feel good. Give me a 0 or something if you don't. I don't know, reside in, a rain from. I was just thinking on the spot, man. Okay. Well, you guys are really catching on. This is one of the hardest things. All the main thing to remember is anytime we are taking information from a form, right? And we're calling this request.post, this value comes from the name of my input. That is wildly important. People get this confused all the time. This must be the name of the input in my form. Right here. Cool. Now, somebody asked a question. Well, what if I do this? And it says confirm form resubmission. This page that you're looking for, blah, blah, blah. And it does it, right? And I can do this 100 times. I can keep doing that. Great. And if I look, I've got all these post requests and it's sending that, it's resending that information, right? The El Chapo, the Mexico, the lingua tacos. It's resending all that information. Can anybody think of why that would be a bad idea? Yeah, Mark and Nathan are dead on. What if instead of just creating a taco truck, I was ordering on Amazon? Right, and I accidentally refreshed and it resent the same information. It submitted a new order with my credit card information. Anytime you are on a website, if you try to refresh on the checkout page and it gives you this, you should run very far away because that's not great coding. A, not very secure. But then B, we want to make sure that we don't resubmit data. I don't need duplicates in my, that makes my database poor. All right, you think about Facebook, the reason they are billionaires is because they have good data on people, right? But more importantly, if a credit card is there, right, then I'm going to submit a ton of different requests. So we never, if you hear me say anything, this is one thing you should absolutely hear every single time. We never render on the method that receives a post request. We will always, 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 always redirect. Anytime a method is receiving some post data, it should never render. Always redirect. So what we'll actually do is redirect. And let's say we want to redirect to dashboard, truck, dash. Cool. So, okay, I've taken my information. I've created this context. let's go to truck dash. I'm gonna go to views dot dashboard. I always spelled dashboard wrong. Just a heads up. It's one of my bugaboos. Never spell it right. Okay. So then I need some sort of def dashboard. Send a request. And then I'm going to say return render. What am I going to render? I'm going to take in a request. Ooh, sorry. Request truck.html. Now, one thing I really want to point out, and normally what I do is I try to show the error, but we're kind of cutting on time, so I'm just going to talk about this. Something that is important to note is that post data only lasts to the first method that receives it. So here, I could not do this. This will have no idea what request.post data is because this one receives the post data, redirects. Once this redirect hits, that data is dead. It's done. No more. Finito. And it cannot persist in this way. It cannot persist across different methods. Does anybody know what I mean by persist across different methods? It means I cannot call it here if it initially goes to this method. Once it goes to this method, that's it. It's done. It's not a scope thing. It's just the life cycle of the request data. That way it's not holding on to data like, because that would be pretty insecure, right? If all these different functions and methods were calling it the same thing. It's nope, it has this one and that's it. It held its time. You got the data and that's it. That's it. That's done. So when we work with a actual database, when we work with our models, what we will do is we will have our creation. So we will create our truck here, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks, maybe next week. I think it's next week. We will create our truck here, redirect to then show that information. But right now we're not there. So there's one way that we can actually make data persist across different methods. And you can kind of think about it like this. If I log into Facebook right now, I don't need to go relog in. It has some little bits of information about who's making the request, right? Where, the IP address that it's coming from. And if you log into Facebook now, if I just type in facebook.com, it will go to my Facebook. It will be logged in just like that. Yes, Nathan, just like cookies. But from a lower level, it's a little bit lower level. It's called session. Session is a way that we can actually just store little pieces of information in my browser. I think it partly comes from my database. Store little bits of information that can persist across. Who is logged in for what we're doing right now? Who is logged in is a great thing to know. You will use session on your exam, and it will be to see who is logged in. You can kind of think about it like when I post a Facebook post. I don't have to log in, so that way when I create that Facebook post, it says, okay, well, who's the user who's creating that Facebook post, right? It has my information. Although I'm redirecting and doing a bunch of stuff, it has my information there. And so the way we would do that here is we would use what we call session. And so in the same way, kind of, that we created a context, we are going to, in session, create a key value pair that we can call somewhere else. Now, before we do that, there's this pesky little, if I type clear, and I run this, you see that you have 17 unapplied migrations. Migration for the apps, admin, auth, content types, sessions. This lives in my settings, right? Not only do I say my app, but there's this built-in session. So what I actually have to do is I actually have to make migrations. What this does is when I'm creating a database, this will migrate to my database so I can actually store some sort of information, right? It is a way to connect the two so I can actually start storing information. We are absolutely going to do this with databases. And in order for us to use session, I also have to migrate. That is a fact. So the way we do that is I'm here. I'm going to type clear again. Oops. What I first do is I say Python 3. I'm in my environment and I'm at my project level. I got to spell Python right. That's number one ipso facto. Manage.py. I say make migrations. Oh my gosh. I spelled that so bad, friends. Make migrations. Now this says no changes detected because we don't actually have any sort of models that we created for a database. This is going to say anytime we create a new model, right? Let's say we create a user and then our app changes and now we're doing food trucks, right? And I might make a food truck model. I would make migrations. It will check for anything new. Now we don't have that right now. But what I say is, okay, I usually like to run both. .py and I say migrate. Now, when I say migrate, it does all of this and it says, okay, now I can use this last one is the most important. Now I can start using session. I can use this built-in application because I now have migrated and it now is using SQLite 3. So it is part of session is lives partly on your database that we're using right now is SQLite 3. And so now it says, okay, I've connected the two. I'm good to go. You can now run and use session. So what I can do is I can just run my server. But now you see, I don't have that error, right? I don't have the 17 unapplied migrations. I'm good to go. I've already made that migration. But now what I can do in my views is I can say something like this, request.session. When I say request.session, I also have to give a key name. I'm creating a key value pair. Now you don't have a dictionary of sessions. You just create a single key value pair. Session is not meant to host a ton of data. I just want to point that out. You don't want a ton of stuff living on your browser. But for what we're doing, and just showing you, this is a way that we can make data persist. So what I can say is truck. That is, if I'm looking at the documentation, I'm looking here, I can say, well, that equals request.post of truck name. So let's go make that equals request.post of, I like to do it capital. I don't think you have to, but it makes it look nice and orange. And so I like to do that. Truck name. So if I want to say region, I can say region. I want to say SPECIL. Cool. So now I'm creating 3 different things in session called that is a key of truck, a key of region, key of special, just like I did kind of here, right? And then I'm setting its value to whatever was passed in, because this is the request, this is the method that then handles that request. So I'm saying, you know, whatever is the value of truck name, let's put that in session. So now if I wanted to, there's 2 things I could do. I can still have this context. Context only lives. This was always very confusing to me when I first started. So I want to make sure I point this out. Also, sorry, I got very dark. Let me turn on my lamp. Context only lives on a render. Anytime you're rendering, that's when context lives. You're not going to have a context on a redirect. It's not going to do anything. You're going to create it and then it's going to die. So anytime you're rendering, that's where you're going to want to do context. Just kind of something there. Oh man, that's very bright. Sorry. Color. Okay. Okay, perfect. So now what I can do is once I create this key, I have access to this information from anywhere in my views. And not only anywhere in my views, but I can actually go and instead of even putting something in context, I can just say this. Request.session. Now you can't do the key name in the sense of the brackets, but you can just say truck. And then request session special. Okay. So now if I were to run this, see, is my server running? It is still running. So now if I go to localhost, and what do you want to give me another taco truck name? Taco truck name, Guadalupe. Love that. Guadalupe. Charlie's Chorizo. Sorry, my dog's name is Charlie. I love that. I'm gonna call it Chuck's. Chuck's Chorizo. The dog Chuck's the goat. Food region, where do we want? From Guadalupe. I love that. Guadalupe, yeah. And then specialty? A chorizo, yeah, you have to. Have you guys ever had a chicharron burrito? Well, dude, growing up in New Mexico, the food was pretty good. I'm gonna say burrito because now I'm hungry. Okay, so when I do this, I get a error name. This is the most popular thing you are going to run into. I just want you to know that. Oh, yes. So what this I'm glad this happened. I didn't plan on this happening. But what this multi-value dict key error is saying, okay, at truck name, and if you scroll down, it says request.post truck name. I have no idea what that is. That's what this is saying. I don't know what truck name is. Typically, this is because people are trying to call the different name of the input. What it is because I still have context and I forgot to cross that out. So let's go back. I have to refresh, but we'll do it again real quick. Perfect. So I can see that I still have that. My rendering didn't actually need context, right? I'm just rendering, but because this is in session, it's accessible wherever I am. So if I wanted that here, that value is now accessible. That's what we call persistent data. It now persists across methods and across different files. Now, really, the only two files are your HTML and your views, but that's a really great thing. I personally would get in the habit of creating a context and not necessarily calling like this, but get in the habit because you are going to use context a lot. So get in the habit of, instead of doing this, actually just come here. You can say context equals request.post truck or request.session truck, right? Because this is accessible now to this information. So I can say request.session region and special. John asked, how long is it stored, or where is session data stored and for how long? So I think it varies on where, or for how long, I'm sorry. I believe it's stored partly on your browser. So if I were to come in here, right, and I were to, right click and I go inspect, and then it's going to be kind of hard and hidden. But if I go to application here, you can actually see session storage or local storage, sorry. And this is, if they're using session, then it will be stored here. I believe it's 45 days. I think I looked it up one time, and usually by default, it is 45 days. Now, transparently, cookies is something that's wildly popular for storing data. And so the idea behind session and why we're teaching it is because this is just a way to keep persistent data. But typically you will have some sort of cookies as well. That is really going to be one of the drivers for persistent data. But if you remember, maybe you haven't logged into your, let's say your email, right, for a while. Well, it might actually log you out because, you know, the session has died or the cookie has died. So I think it's 45 days, but I do think it changes, and then it is stored partly in the browser, but also partly in your database. And so that is why we had to migrate first. Great question, though. Okay. Poor cracklins. That does sound good. Okay. Any questions on session and any questions on forms? Those are really my two big hitters today. We've gone quite a long time, but we also had the cool thing about our keys. So that's kind of cool. Any questions on this stuff? Now,
Yeah,
if I
so
do put this in context, I do also have to pass context. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, will that avoid like when you refresh to resubmit your data? This the way to like work around it?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
You remember how you were saying like if you are rendering the post, like it will submit your data again and
Oh, yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So is that the way
once
to
we
work around it?
redirected,
Mhm.
now it's, if you refresh, it's not
Mm.
resubmitting that anymore because of that
Okay.
redirect. That's why that redirect is so important. Because once
Oh.
that happens, then now anytime we refresh, we're just refreshing and calling this, making it. Because you can see that although my form is saying go to create user, it goes to create user. And even if we look here, okay, right here. So this is my local host. It goes to, it's a post request to create user. Then I redirect, and even a redirect is a get request. By default, any sort of request is a get request, unless stated otherwise, which that's why we have to put method equals post. So then it does whatever is in create user, then it creates a get request. So anytime if I refresh, it's just refreshing here.
Okay.
That's why it's I'm refreshing this guy right here.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions? How do you guys feel about forms in session? 0.5. Okay, that's okay. 1. It is lots of material. That's absolutely true. We're going to be using forms quite a bit, like literally moving forward. Whenever we do models and stuff, we will use forms. So you will get plenty of practice. You will get plenty of practice as we do this. And then I will make sure that I always am trying to do some sort of something in session just to continue to give you guys practice at this. Yes, Jordan. So session data allows the data to be called in a different method. Yeah, it makes it what we call persistent, right? Because remember, request.post data only lives on the initial method that intakes it. And then after that, it's done. So by putting it in session, I can now call it in different areas and call it throughout my entire code. And whenever we build this, whenever we build like our application for our belt exam, we will do that exact thing. We will build a very large, very not super large, but a big views that does a bunch of stuff. And we're going to be calling session and basically the ID of my user all throughout. Kevin asks, where did truck dash come from? That is coming from my use. I redirect to truck dash. It goes, checks my URLs PY, finds truck dash, use.dashboard, and then it finds dashboard and then does whatever this says. Yeah, I'll push it to GitHub. Absolutely. Let's do that. So I say get init. I'm initializing. Get add space period. Get status. Now I have my get ignore. Let's see if it works. And I'll keep posting my code to GitHub. That way, as you guys are doing this, you can do that. Okay, so let's go to GitHub real quick. It gives me green squares. So let's go. June iPhone. Okay. I go here, add this guy. Right, let's see if it worked. Yep, so now you can see I don't have my secrets.py here, right? It is ignored there. I've got a get ignore that says secrets.py is ignored. My user will never see that. They don't know what it is. They just know that it got ignored. So maybe in a dependency, I might say like, hey, you might need your API key, something like that, some sort of README. But now you can see that I don't have that secret key anymore. If I go to my settings, it is calling secrets.secret key. But now I have prevented that from being uploaded to GitHub. Just as a reminder, I get init, I get add, I commit, then I build the repository in my GitHub. I follow those steps for the ones that have already been initialized. And then my code is uploaded onto GitHub. Did you have a question, Nathan?
Yeah. So when I first, uploaded to GitHub, not knowing the secret key was there, I kept going, uploaded I did a few more changes, pushed a bunch to GitHub. Then I noticed the email, but the key, that file kind of persisted in the history of my version history because I posted 3 or 4 times. Then I realized, how do I then strip it out of GitHub once it's been there? Because it's kind of still there.
Oh,
That
that's a
secret
great
key
question.
file. Yeah.
That is a question that I will have to get back to you on. That's a really good question.
Okay.
Because the previous versions do have that. So for you to look at the version control, that's a good question. Let me ask. Let me do a little bit of research, and then I can personally either message you on Discord or we can talk about that on Monday. For sure, that's a great question, though.
I think it's important to share with everybody since we've all probably didn't notice it right away.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
secrets.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll do a little bit of research, and then either if it's a quick fix, then either I'll just put it on Discord and make a quick little video and then give it to you guys on Discord. Just say, go, here's my little video of how to do that. Mark, the question was, what if, because Git is a version control, right? So this is the current version, but if I, push something else or works on another project, has the different versions, and a previous version still has the secret key, although they've updated that. So how do we get that off? That's a great question that I'm gonna have to research a little bit. Cool. Any other questions, friends?
Yeah,
Any
I
questions
have
on?
one,
Yeah,
maybe
go ahead.
2. So I know that you re-enabled, or I guess uncommented context there under dashboard, and then that you've returned render and then you called context. When I re-enabled that or uncommented on mine, I get an error. I get a multi-value dict key error. And
Are you doing the request.session, or do you still have the request.post?
Yep, that's what did it. Yep.
Yeah. So remember, the request.session is what is the persistent data key, right? The key that can be accessed anywhere. So if we're going to do that for context, if we did want to have a context, which I would encourage you to get used to doing in context, then then you have to have request.session, because that will give you the value. And then I should actually change this to just region special. It's gonna act the same way, but this is how you would do it in context.
Right. Yeah, I just spaced and missed that on mine. Sorry.
No, totally fine.
My other question is with the redirect that we have with create, we have the redirect and then / truck dash. Could you show me your URLs file for that, the truck dash path real quick? I just want to see if it's, because I was having an issue with mine. Just want to get a chance.
Yeah, give me just 1 second. I want to make sure.
Yeah, no worries.
Code. Okay, so now the new code should be up. What was your question, my friend?
Yeah, so I was just having an issue with the / and the path in the views for the redirect. So could you just click on your URL? Yeah, so the views, I have the / truck dash. My issue was I also had / truck dash in the URLs.
Yeah, so
path.
URLs do not
Okay.
have a slash in there, or else it's going to be looking for /
Okay.
truck.
Okay,
So
and
it's
that's
gonna look for 2 slashes.
so slash is kind of implicit then.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great.
Yeah, really, if you put a slash here, it will look for a, localhost 8000 /, and if you put a post, it'll look for an additional /, then truck dash.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions, my friends? I know this is a lot, but we still have quite a few weeks to walk through this. If you guys have any questions, I really would encourage you use the code reviews. Absolutely use the code reviews. Rick asks, can you talk about hidden input types? I will be talking about that later on. Right now, I feel like that will stress some people out. So when we get into models, we're absolutely going to talk about hidden input types and how we can pass some data through a form. Let's say like who, in session, whenever we create a user, we're going to have their ID number. And then if I want to know who is making that form, like who's making that post, I will create a hidden input, and the name will be, user, and the value will be whatever my request.session key is. So that's how we'll do it. But I will talk about that later on. Don't really want to get into that right now. But feel free to, Rick, if you want to set up a one-on-one with either myself or one of the instructors, if you're like there, I don't want to bring you down. Like we can actually do that. I just feel like we went over some heavy stuff today, and I want to make sure that people don't actually get a little bit more confused. But happy to walk through that with you. Any other questions, my friends? The code's up to GitHub. It's now linked on here. So if you want, it'll be right there. And I think it should have the most recent. Oh, yeah. Oops. So you're going to have to go back one, and I'll change that. Yeah, now it does have the most recent. Cool. Cool. Anything else, friends? If not, I hope you have a wonderful night. I'll stop the recording.